Such a naturally sacred thing to know yourself, to know the being that you are, to be in such a flow of grace in this lifetime that it has come forward to know the true essential nature. What incredible grace to be in a lifetime where there is the readiness and maturity to illuminate and untangle from the collective. What incredible grace to know the silence and stillness of being that we are, and to meet underneath the play of division, even diversity, in the one heart that is wide open, infinite love. What incredible grace. And so our gathering is a celebration of this grace. We're not trying to get anywhere. We're not trying to make anything happen. We're just resting here in the radiant celebration of what is true. Awakening is the mind's idea of expansion out of something, out of some kind of containment, out of some kind of sleepy dream. Realization is the recognition that you always are and that you always have been, and that there never has been anyone to awaken out of anything. Right? So we are here in the openness, inviting the ever-deepening realization of what we are in truth, what we have always been, in order to illuminate that we have never been divided, separate in any way from the essential wholeness, and to just taste the wholeness of true nature is such an incredible celebration, such an incredible victory, right? Jai, jai, jai. What a victory to awaken out of the dream of separation, out of the illusion, and to have this possibility to move through this incredibly graced process of refinement, where we come to realize that knowing the being, being the aware, being the light, the unmoving, silent, still presence of being. What incredible grace. And then to be carried through the vehicle of life living itself in order to know what life truly is, to be life, right? To come out of the stagnancy, out of the illusion and the delusion of the mind, out of the imagined, out of the entanglement with the overlays, to actually realize what life truly is, and that we are life. Not just this human life, we are life eternal, life divine. We are the life that is God. We are the life that just is. And life uses its flow of diversity and uniqueness in order to bring the remembering, the realization of life itself, the one life, the essence, nature, the vitality, the flow, that which has never been touched or tainted or disturbed, that which has never been born, that which can never die, the life eternal, that which gives life to the human life, right? It animates and pervades the human experience. But the human experience does not divide us from divinity. It does not divide us from source. And it most definitely does not divide us from wholeness. And we have this incredible possibility in this human life to realize true life, divine life, whole life, holistic life, living itself, holy life, and to recognize the natural sacredness of this life, right? That the holiness, the sacredness is not some kind of specialness. It's not some kind of exalted state that is divided from the ordinary. In its natural humility, it is ordinariness in its extraordinariness. Extraordinarily ordinary, right? It's living this life without hiding, living this life without turning away from anything, because we no longer need to. Everything is welcomed equally, and everything comes to be realized that it is what you are, that there is only one here, and what that one is life. So we use life, the integrated, embodied living, seemingly, to recognize, to be the means for life to know itself all the way through. What a sacred moment this is. What a sacred moment this is, here now, being yourself in the wideness, the infinite, boundless wideness of the true heart, the one heart. And here we find the belonging. That this is not a search or a quest for someone to find something. It is the direct, spontaneous realization that you are not the one who awakens. You are not the one that has any kind of spiritual path or journey or experiences. You are not the one that imagines that you need to do anything, be better, improve yourself. It's this spontaneous realization that you already are whole. And in that, of course, we find the belonging, the enoughness. We find the fullness of true nature. But we have to move through this refinement where we know the wholeness, we know the fullness in direct experience, but we still have these residual ideas that we're not whole, that we're not enough, that we're not lovable. We have these like programs of some kind of deficiency or lack. And the refinement process is basically illuminating and seeing through the programs and conditionings that believe in some kind of lack or deficiency. That we cannot be the being and live this truth wholly in the wholeness that we know in direct experience until we are gracefully carried through by life, the process of refinement that brings a sense of natural integration of all seeming parts into the remembering of the essence, wholeness, that is the interconnectedness, that which joins everything in a universal, divine light, a universal truth. That the truth cannot be spoken, the truth cannot be known by the mind. That the truth is this living awakeness. It's this living glory that just is. It's like we have to leave our sense of humanness and my life and mine in order to discover the being that is independent and free via the witnessing presence that watches everything, and where the witnessing presence here now, watching the mind, watching the body, watching the story, watching the sense perception, as the witnessing presence watches, the witnessing presence itself, which is consciousness itself, consciously coming into the remembering of being the awareness, the conscious awareness, and not being the experience, not being the content. So in the witnessing presence, the witnessing consciousness, consciousness itself starts to realize, I'm watching the content, I'm watching the experience, I'm watching the moving, changing ebbs and flows. And if I am watching and I am not disturbed, then what am I? What is this I that I am, that is seemingly independent and free of the story, of the illusion of separation? What am I in truth that is not divided, not disturbed? What am I? What is I? What is this felt sense of myself that is somehow not the me, the mine, the mind, the thoughts, the experience, the content? Then what am I that is untouched and free in the face of all of life? Then what am I? This true inquiry naturally happens when we are resting and as the awareness that is naturally aware. What am I as the openness that never closes? What am I that can see it all but is never touched or disturbed? What am I? And this questioning is the self-awareness of awareness, aware of itself and curious, turned back towards itself, consciously gazing at itself, the recognition, the remembering, oh, I am myself. I is myself. And myself is not the person, not the story, not the mind or the things. Just being myself is just to be here aware of only myself. That I am not the body, I am not the mind or the story, that I am not the things, the objects of experience or the content. That I am ever present, ever free, ever open, ever clear. I am always myself. I am never not myself. And this is consciousness, as consciousness itself remembers. Right? The consciousness itself seemingly awakens to remember itself. And it has nothing to do with anyone, ever. Nothing ever happens to the me. Nothing ever has happened. There has been a lot of thinking, but has anything actually ever happened? Apart from a whole lot of thinking, a whole lot of thoughts. But what are those thoughts? What are those thoughts in substance? So we leave the me and the mine. We come to the witnessing presence and we open to being the consciousness that is consciously awake to itself as being awareness, the awareness that is untouched and ever free, the awareness that is ever present, clear, open. And we start to feel the deep peace of what I truly is. I is peace. I is simplicity. I is this being. I just is this moment here now. It's not a person. It's not identified anywhere, ever. I just is. The felt sense of being is this sense of we could say the I am presence that just realizes in the amness, there is just simply being. There's no one that am. There's no one that is. There's just the being that is. So here, there is a sense of being the whole wide, expansive, awake field. As we open, the sense in the unique experience is of awakening or expanding or opening. But in truth, there is nothing really expanding. There's a dropping of the veils. What are the veils made of? They're made of beliefs that I'm not whole, I'm not lovable, I'm not enough, right? They're made of the deficiency story. They're made of the sense of lack. The veils are essentially just beliefs in lack, something missing, a belief in division, a belief in whatever that deficiency story is. And so that's why we cannot just open to the vastness of being. We have to, as the awake awareness, as the light, we have to at some point turn back and illuminate the residues of the sense of me and mine in order to free all of the threads that feel to be deficient in some way, that feel to be entangled in story of trauma or upset, that keep this belief in some kind of lack, that something is missing alive. And so life itself offers us everything that is needed. It's pure magic because it is pure intelligence. It is wisdom light, radiantly shining and creating the appearance in reflection of our whole consciousness and reflecting an appearance of life that plays as stories that give us the opportunity to see a reflection of our core stories of deficiency, of lack, so that we have this possibility to not keep perpetuating and playing them out, just moving from assumption, moving from conditioning, and just repeating the same old ways. Well, this is the way I am. This is the way it is. This is the way life is. Not at all, right? We start illuminating, and we have to find some courage here, and we have to come to a depth of longing that we're willing, because this is the part that is not always comfortable. It's a bumpy ride, the refinement process. Seeing, illuminating the places that feel like there is something missing will bring defense. It will bring the drive, the instinct to protect and survive forward. And it will bring forward the feeling that if I don't win this, I'm going to die. Surely I'm going to die, right? If I don't protect here, if I let go, if I surrender here, if I be the being here, then I will surely die. I won't make it. Because these survival mechanisms, these protective mechanisms from the young life, they were survival mechanisms, right? This is where it gets kind of intricate. They were survival mechanisms. They were the strategies we used to survive. They were the ways that we learned to get our needs met within dysfunctional situations. So we have played out and moved using these strategies. And we could say from a mental perspective, well, they've worked. They've worked, right? Why fix what isn't broken? And yet right at the heart of these strategies is a belief in brokenness, right? The strategies may work on a certain level, but if right at the heart of the strategies is a belief in deficiency, a belief in brokenness, a belief in somehow being less than, apart from, divided from, not enough, unlovable, unworthy. If right at the core of our strategies that seem to work, there is deficiency, we will always be operating in a sense of lack. Now, the being in our direct experience, is the being lacking? No. Is there wholeness here? Yes. Right? It's immediately known. There's no doubt, there's no question in the felt sense of being that wholeness is here. But it's a depth of wholeness that is a fine frequency of being that the mind can never know. So we can't use being the being as a strategy of the mind to keep that protection and feeling of safety. To be the being is to pull up the anchor, right? To really pull up the anchor and just be the being. And this is why the grace of life acts as the bridge, where we can imagine that we can just pull up the anchor, surrender it all, and just be one with God. And on a certain level, we can, but life will show us the places that have not been fully illuminated and brought into the remembering and realization of wholeness. So the process of refinement is bringing all of these places within our internal functioning into the light, into the radiant light of being. Knowing the safety and wholeness of the being gives us like a stable sanctuary of knowing, of clear, pure knowing, which allows the light of awareness to shine upon the protective mechanisms, the conditionings, the strategies. And we don't have to do anything. This is the glory. Life will bring it forward, because these places, right, when we're in a place of contraction, a story of deficiency, a story of lack, of resistance, if we find out as the awareness, we just shine the light and we ask the question, what does this place really want? Does this place really want to protect? The voice of this place will say, usually say, no. What does this place want? Does this place want to be angry? Does this place want to divide and protect? No. What does this place want? And these places will always say in some way that they want to be free. They will always say in their own very beautiful, innocent language, I want to let go. I want love. I want to be happy. I just want to let go. I want to feel whole. I want to know God, right? Because these places in their essence nature are already in the knowing of what is true. These places have never in truth been divided. The sense of division is a belief, and the strategies are protective mechanisms that worked at a certain point in life, but they're now feeling limiting. They're now feeling like limitations. They're now feeling like, I don't want to be in this contraction. I don't want to be feeling limited. I don't want to be feeling deficient. I don't want to be fighting with myself. I don't want to be in these stories that are unkind. It's like we have enough awareness illuminated, where we start to realize this isn't who I am, and I don't want to move in these contracted circles. I know this isn't what I am, and I just want to let it go. And so any place that speaks in this way knows the true wholeness. And yet we have to allow the natural wise process. And in a way, it plays out like layers. Or we could say it plays out like peeling layers of an onion. Something like that would be an image. In a way, what it is that we go deeper and deeper into the protections. We meet the surface protections. We meet the first layer of protections are like ego sense. This is who I am. Personality, stuff like that. And in a way, when we open to knowing true nature, we see through and we say, oh yeah, that's not who I am. That's not what I am. I'm not the person. And we let go of this first layer and we know the truth of who we are. I'm not the person. It's known in the knowing of being. I'm not the person. I'm not the story, right? And it feels really clear, really open. And yet what happens is then the next layer reveals. And the next layer is like the subconscious programming that starts to play out in these ways of protection and conditioning. And we're feeling very expanded, and then something happens, or we react, or we move in a way that's like, ooh, that's contracted. That feels tight. What happened there? And yet we still know the being. So we have this layer where we're illuminating things that don't necessarily create intensity or upset, but they just feel tight and a little bit icky and a little bit like, what was that? Right? It's like a reaction, a protection, a certain way of behaving that feels limited in some way. And yet it doesn't actually take you away from being the being. So there's this layer, and we can keep illuminating these places. And some of these places will let go very freely, like, oh yeah, that doesn't serve anymore. It gets illuminated, it drops. Some of those places will try to defend because they are holding a sense, well, this is part of my identity. This is the way that I do things, right? So we can illuminate those. We just illuminate them, and we meet any stirring in the nervous system that is like the energy signature of defense. We come to start to recognize the energy signature of a nervous system that is defended. And we move through these places, and some of them can be really sticky, and some of them not so much. But we can keep coming to recognize the being that's not touched, the being that's not touched. And as we open more to the natural being, as we open more, and as our remembering really starts to deepen and kind of anchor in what starts to feel like remembering and realization, it's like we are this brilliant radiance in our true nature. And to this radiance is drawn the deeper, darker, murky depths of our residues, right? Because these residues, we start to enter these murky lands, shadowlands of suppression, right? The suppression of these places where we didn't feel safe to express, so we just kind of tucked it away, kind of close-ish to the surface, but we tucked it away and we strategized so that we didn't show that part, right? So there's strategy there that really starts, right? So it's deeper than personality and characterful preferences and those more protections that are connected with identity. These are more connected with like strategies of survival, wanting to be seen in the right light, the imagined, like, I have to be seen the right way. I have to say the right thing. I don't want to create conflict. Like, we learn through our needs met structured certain ways of behaving. So we learn to suppress certain things and keep smiling and saying things like, oh yeah, it's all okay. It's all okay. You know, it's fine. I got this. Yeah. So there is these layers, right? Where we learn these strategies and ways of behaving in ways that are acceptable. And we learn here to refine our strategies so that we can really keep smiling. Oh yeah, I'm just grateful for it all. Truly, I am. But it's kind of reeks of waiting for the word. It's not truly okay with it. Tolerance, right? It reeks of tolerance. It reeks of tolerating, learning to tolerate something that's truly actually unpalatable, but there's a learned mechanism. Don't show that this is unpalatable, right? Suppress it. And this is where we start storing undigested material, because we don't necessarily fully digest it, because we haven't necessarily learned how in our younger life. So we learn to behave in these ways, and we tuck away what's not palatable, but we act through this tolerance, right? It's not true surrender. It's not true allowing. It's like a tolerance. And we start to develop a tolerance, ability to tolerate more and more and keep smiling. Sometimes we'll get angry. Sometimes we'll get hurt. Sometimes we'll get upset. Sometimes we'll get reaction. But we learn to kind of suppress a certain amount of that. Now, of course, if something catches us off guard, it can flare up. And we learn to smooth that over and come to our accepted behavior. Whoops, what was that? Whoops. You know, we might even have a strategy for kind of diverting the attention away from that so that we can hide, right? But this whole unfolding, the grace of refinement, is that we're being asked to illuminate and see all of this and come into connection with life so fully, ready with our light on, the light of being, ready being the light that illuminates it all and is so willing to be undefended and unguarded in these places. And the more that we meet these places, we come to recognize that unguarding and actually meeting these places without suppressing, and that there's a way to move to meet these places where we can be honest about what's happening without projecting, because our learned tactic is to project, right? If something does happen and arise, we project it, we blame and we project, or we get immersed in shame and guilt. We have these strategies that we work with, and all of us have them, and they are unique in their subtleties, but essentially it's the same. It's the human condition. It's how the human condition functions in its story of lack. The condition is the deficiency, the story of lack. So the deeper that we go and the more willing we are to meet these areas of suppression, and we start unraveling the sensations in the nervous system, so we start allowing more of this to come forward, we get into even murky waters, right? We get into what might be called more of the repressed, right? The places where in the younger life we stuffed it down because it was actually survival to not, right? We learned just to put that away. We actually have forgotten even that even happened. And yet it got stuffed in to the nervous system as a holding pattern. We don't even have a memory, a conscious memory of it that we access. In the subconscious, we're not fully conscious of it, but we can illuminate it and access it. But in the unconscious, right, we're not even aware. And we often react from these places. They can be a little shocking because something quite small can happen, like, because it's like a subliminal trigger, and it triggers something subliminally really deep. And the reaction to it can kind of seem like it is out of proportion to what happened, right? And then we feel ashamed. We go into our shame, or a sense of fear of what might happen if we're seen as being that way, right? Or what might happen as a result of that. So we become very afraid and to even allow these energies to surface. So we suppress what has already been repressed as it's trying to surface, right? Because we don't know how to allow this stuff to come forward. And then when we open to our spiritual journey, we come to these ideas and concepts about what it is to be spiritual, which are based in truth, but they're generally misunderstood and a complete impossibility for a human to maintain, right? So we create these ideas of how we need to be and behave, which causes us to suppress even more, because we believe that we're absolutely not supposed to show anything other than shininess, right? And if you dare to show anything, that you're going to be booed out of the brownies or the Cub Scouts, right? You're going to be booed out of satsang. You're going to be booed out of, of whatever spiritual gathering you're taking part in. If you dare to show something that you're going to reveal a part of yourself that you have learned is not acceptable because you were not able to allow it and accept it in your young life because it wasn't safe and it wasn't acceptable in the young life, because we had parents and guardians that couldn't handle because they were already suppressed and repressed, right? They were already in deep protective mechanisms and acting out from these places. So what chance was there for us, right, in the young life? And this is what we're freeing, because this is the story. And yes, in the deepest truth, we can say there's nothing really there. It's true, there's nothing really there. But how does that help us untangle the mess that we believe that we are? We have to be able to retrace and illuminate the tangle in love, in presence, in the knowing of our true radiance. We have to be able to untangle. Otherwise, we just get more and more entrenched in suppressing anything from coming forward, right? And when we are a being that knows true nature and that is living this truth illuminated, in a way, we have this possibility then of suppressing even more, because we're trying to hold to some kind of spiritual persona, that it feels even harder, right, to reveal these places. And then they start acting out within the spiritual communities as shadows, right? Where the often where the guide is holding some kind of power that has a way of diverting away from these places coming forward, right? Now, of course, we can only do our own work with this, and we are creating those kind of dynamics out of our own repression and suppression, right? So it's always a reflection. But what is so essential is that we have to trust what we are noticing and do our own work with what we are noticing. That we're not reliant upon possible protective mechanisms that asked us to give our power away. Because if we give our power away, we can miss the opportunity to go deeper, right? We have to go deeper. Now, these situations play out, and we've all experienced these kind of situations. They play out as a means for us to stay in our power boots, to stay in the power boots of deep intuitive knowing that if something feels off, it probably is, but it's not about going to the projection and trying to seek out and change anything else. It's about coming deeply into your own feelings, sensations. What are you suppressing? What are you not saying? What is happening? What is stopping you showing your anger? What is stopping you showing what is truly happening for you, right? It's all life giving the means for you to reveal what is happening within your own functioning, right? And of course, we're mentioning these kind of communities because we're familiar with this, but this can also be happening in families, in work environments, in any kind of circles of companionship, right? So it's always about our own work, always. But we have to never lose sight that it's all a play and it's happening for you. Whatever is happening in your play, you have to say, this is happening because there's something here to be seen. Whatever it is, whatever it is. We are one in the heart. We are one in the heart of God. We are one in the heart of love, of truth. And everything that is moving here is so fully in submission to that truth that is unfathomable, that truth that no one being can be an expression of, right? Not in human form. That we're in this deepening, and the invitation is that we want to be able to welcome everything that is coming forward, and it has to be welcomed into a safety. The nervous system, the consciousness, the patterns of consciousness will only let go into a safety, a purity, a remembering, a recognition, right? It's this. And the remembering of safety is inside us. Even the part that says, I don't feel safe. What does that part want? It wants safety because it does remember safety. And safety is the one being, right? Safety is the one being. It's the knowing of the being. It's not someone else. It's never someone else. It's the knowing of the being that brings us into the absolute remembering of the interconnectedness, the unquestionable oneness of what we are. And so in this moment, it's to feel the felt sense of being, the unboundedness, the openness, the naturalness, that which knows that it's actually simple to recognize this boundless part of you that is free. And the only reason that it doesn't seem easy to rest here is because all of these discordant patterns that keep pulling the attention into a sense of some kind of deficiency or a sense of lack or something missing, that creates the illusion of separation, where the mind is moving constantly to project an image of my world that is divided from seemingly other people's worlds, right? So we're coming to a deeper remembering, a deeper opening through the means of life. And life, as we meet it, and we meet these places, and that we can actually be fully present as the presence of being with everything that arises in the nervous system, that we can allow this transmutation to happen through the nervous system that releases the old stress, releases the old programming in the stress, in the nervous system. It releases, transmutes, it lets go. So we want to be able to allow everything that moves into the nervous system that is trying to surface to be able to fully surface. And sometimes we can meet these places, and sometimes we need support and companionship to help us remember how to welcome these places, remember who we are in the face of anything that arises, so that these discordant patternings that feel like stress can truly surface and release. Because this is what brings us to wholeness, wholeness, freedom that is completely whole. It's not an abstract sense of wholeness in the absolute. It's that we come to absolute wholeness by releasing everything that can create any sense of division. That we realize that if we're longing for this freedom, why would we turn away from anything? Can we just face it all, knowing that it arises in its own readiness, that we don't need to go into a process of trying to find it, trying to look for it. Sometimes that can actually just bring forward more than we can handle, or it feels like that. Of course, there's a perfection in the play. If we're looking for it and we're digging around, there has to be its own perfection. But if we just really allow the play of life to bring forward what is needed, it will also bring forward the support and the means within it, because it's an intelligent wisdom that is whole and holistic in that. Right. So here we are, just opening to all of this.